In the late 1982nd, Rick Moranis was everywhere. He was the face of family comedies, the quirky genius in Ghostbusters, the lovable dad in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the star of Spaceballs. Audiences adored him. Hollywood embraced him. Then, one day, he vanished. No scandal, no dramatic farewell, no tabloid meltdown. He simply walked away. For years, the industry was silent. No one knew what had happened. Rumors swirled. Had he burned out? Was he blacklisted? Had fame finally crushed him? But the truth was much quieter and far more heartbreaking. What Rick Moranis chose to do in the face of personal tragedy wasn't a fall from grace. It was something almost no one in Hollywood ever does. He disappeared not to escape the spotlight, but to become something more powerful than any role he ever played. A father. But the truth behind it is much darker. Frederick Allen Moranis was born in Toronto, Canada, in 1953, into a modest Jewish household. There were no flashing lights or showbiz connections, just a quiet upbringing in the suburbs and a boy with a curious mind. Even as a child, Rick had an unusual way of seeing the world. He wasn't loud, but he was clever. While other kids played sports, Rick was mimicking voices from the radio. While others dreamed of being astronauts or firefighters, he was writing parody scripts at the kitchen table. He studied at a public high school with future comedy legend Geddy Lee nearby. But Rick didn't chase popularity. He was the kind of student who observed more than he spoke. In those early years, he found solace in creativity, recording comedy sketches on tape recorders, inventing characters, learning timing. His first job wasn't on a stage, it was behind a microphone. As a teenager, Rick became a radio disc jockey, spinning records and testing jokes on live air under the name Rick Allen. It was here he sharpened his comedic instincts, not for applause, but for connection. In the late 1972nd, he was invited to join a sketch comedy show called Second City Television. It wasn't a Hollywood break, it was Canadian, low-budget, scrappy, and absolutely perfect for Rick. At SCTV, he unleashed his genius. His impressions, oddball characters, and dry wit made him a standout. But even then, fame wasn't his goal. What mattered was the art, the writing, the humor, the collaboration. Behind the glasses and the soft-spoken demeanor was a performer unlike anyone else, sharp, strange, and utterly original. And Hollywood would come calling soon. When Rick Moranis joined SCTV in the late 1972nd, he didn't look like a star. He wasn't tall, he wasn't loud, and he didn't try to dominate the screen. But the camera loved him anyway. Audiences were drawn to his intelligence, the quiet kind of funny that doesn't shout, but lingers. His sketches, especially as half of the bumbling Canadian duo Bob and Doug McKenzie, became cult hits, and Rick's deadpan delivery made him unforgettable. Hollywood noticed. In 1984, he landed the role of Louis Tully in Ghostbusters. It wasn't the lead, but Rick didn't need it to be. He rewrote most of his dialogue, injecting it with nervous energy and neurotic charm. The result, a fan favorite who stole every scene he was in. From there, the momentum was unstoppable. He headlined Spaceballs, Little Shop of Horrors, Parenthood, and of course, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. That last film turned him into a global household name. He wasn't just a comic actor, he was now the face of family movies across the world. What made Rick different was his restraint. He never overplayed, he never craved the spotlight. Directors loved him because he was reliable, improvisational, and kind. Co-stars praised his humility, his professionalism, and his complete lack of ego. And yet, even at the height of his fame, Rick remained Rick. No scandals, no demands, no Hollywood mansion tours. He lived quietly in New York, raising his 2 children with his wife, Anne, away from the industry's chaos. But behind the scenes, life was beginning to change. Tragedy was on the horizon, And soon, everything Rick had built in Hollywood would come to a halt. In 1991, Rick Moranis was at the peak of his career and facing the worst moment of his life. His wife, Anne, had been diagnosed with breast cancer. While Hollywood chased him with scripts and offers, Rick was spending his days in hospitals by her side, trying to hold together a crumbling world no one else could see. They had 2 young children, and while Anne fought for her life, Rick fought to keep life normal for them. In 1991, Anne passed away. There were no headlines, no public statements, no interviews. Rick simply disappeared from the spotlight. For the next few years, he accepted only a handful of small roles, voiceovers, cameos, anything that didn't take him far from home. But slowly, even those stopped. He turned down major projects, big money. Offers came from Disney, from major studios. He said no. He never made a big announcement. No press tour, no pity play. In his words, "I didn't retire from show business. I just chose to stop doing it so I could be a full-time father." In a town obsessed with image, Rick chose invisibility. In a culture driven by ambition, Rick chose presence. It wasn't a downfall in the traditional sense. There were no scandals, no meltdowns, no addiction, no arrests. Just a man walking away, quietly, for the sake of his children. But for Hollywood, it was a loss they never fully processed. Rick Moranis, the genius comic mind, the reliable leading man, was suddenly gone, and the silence he left behind echoed louder than any tabloid headline ever could. Hollywood never got its big goodbye from Rick Moranis. There was no farewell film, no final red carpet, no memoirs filled with juicy confessions, just an absence, a gap where a star used to be. But for Rick, the moment of no return came quietly, over breakfast and school runs. After Anne's death, he became a full-time father, cooking, cleaning, helping with homework, attending school plays. The same man who once shared the screen with Bill Murray and Mel Brooks was now holding hands with his kids in the drop-off line. He didn't resent it, he embraced it. In interviews years later, he spoke of it plainly. "I was a single parent, and I just found that it was too difficult to manage raising the kids and doing the kind of work that I did." Behind those few words was a truth Hollywood rarely hears, that for some people, fame is never worth more than family. The tragedy wasn't in some explosive moment, it was in the slow, graceful exit no one expected. And for years, fans speculated, where was Rick? When would he return? But he didn't. He turned down sequels, franchise reboots, and lucrative deals. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids got multiple follow-ups without him. Ghostbusters returned without him. He said no, again and again, even when the world begged him to come back. Because Rick Moranis didn't disappear out of pain, he disappeared out of love. And sometimes, the most powerful stories are the ones that never try to be told. Rick Moranis didn't leave behind a long list of awards or scandals. He left something rarer: respect. From co-stars to fans, people speak of him with warmth. They don't just remember the characters Louis Tully, Wayne Selinsky, Dark Helmet, they remember how he made them feel. Safe, seen, understood. For an entire generation, Rick Moranis wasn't just funny, he was comfort. A reminder that you didn't have to be loud or handsome or larger than life to be loved. You just had to be real. And though he disappeared, he never truly left. In 2020, after nearly 2 decades, Rick appeared briefly in a commercial with Ryan Reynolds. No announcement, no grand comeback, just a quiet smile, a wave to let the world know he was okay. He may never return to Hollywood, and that's okay, because his legacy isn't a filmography, it's a choice to live life on his own terms, a choice to walk away at the height of fame, a choice to be there for the ones who needed him most. Rick Moranis was more than a star. He was a man who understood what really matters. And maybe That's the greatest role he ever played.